I graduated from Dallas Baptist University with a master's degree in American history in May of 2007. During the fall of 2007, I was hired by DBU as an adjunct professor of American history, and I was scheduled to teach my first American history survey course coming up in the spring 2008 semester. So in preparation during the fall and winter of 2007, I read everything I could get my hands on with a focus on the early years of our history, American history textbooks, surveys, whatever I could find. And I seemed to come across the Spanish influence on American history frequently. I came across names like Father Antonio de Moncinos, a Spanish missionary in the mid-1500s, Bartolomé de las Casas, an early missionary of the mid-1500s, Antonio de Margil Jesus, missionary to Texas in the early 1700s, Junipero Serra, father of the California mission system in the 1770s, who founded missions all along the California coast, and Father Kino, or Eusebio Kino, missionary to the Sonoran area in the late 1600s to early 1700s. I also learned during this time that there are 4 other missions, in addition to the Alamo, along the San Antonio River: Mission Concepcion, Mission San Jose, Mission Espada, and Mission San Juan, in addition to Mission San Antonio de Valero, which was the original name of the Alamo. During that first semester teaching at DBU in February 2008, I took time to visit the other San Antonio missions with my family for the first time. And I found there was just something moving about the missions, their architecture and beauty, their culture and history, something spiritual as well because of their original purpose of making Christ known to the Native Americans. It was really a very moving experience. What kind of dedication and commitment that must have taken to walk or ride horseback from Mexico up to New Spain or New Mexico, or to walk or ride horseback from Nacogdoches to San Antonio, or all along the California coastline, establishing missions each one day's journey from the other, and to build these magnificent mission churches with so little equipment or materials and so remotely located. So years later, when preparing for a Southwestern literature course I was going to take, you can imagine how excited I was when I had a chance to read Willa Cather's Death Comes for the Archbishop, about Catholic missionaries in New Mexico. That book led me on a search for other novels like it, and that search led me to the works of Florence Weinberg. The first novel of hers that I read was Apache Lance Franciscan Cross, published in 2005. This story is based in 1731 and is about the Franciscan friars who were having to move the 3 missions from Nacogdoches to join the 2 existing missions in San Antonio, and they must do so among the Apaches. The second was 7 Cities of Mud, published in 2008, based on the 7 Cities of Gold. This is a story in 1581 to 82, and it's a second expedition up the Rio Grande River with Franciscan friars evangelizing the Pueblo Indians. It's actually based on the true story of the Chamuscado Rodriguez expedition. And finally, there's the trilogy Sonora Moonlight, Sonora Wind, and Storks of La Quiridad from the 2000s, with a 4th novel in the series Unrest in Eden, published in 2011. These books are about one particular missionary, a Jesuit, Father Ignaz Pfefferkorn, and his work in the Sonoran region. The first book is based in 1761 to 62, the second one 1766 to 69 in present-day Arizona, and the third book he goes back to the Spanish monastery La Quiridad in 1775 to 76, and in the 4th novel he's back home in Germany where he finds conflict and murder. So those 6 novels were the 6 that I chose to focus on when studying Florence Weinberg's work, although she's written other works as well, but they're extremely moving, wonderful character development, extremely accurate and in-depth work that she does to find the truth of the stories and then to add the fiction around that. So I had a chance to interview Dr. Florence Weinberg recently about her writing and have an opportunity to share some of that with you. The first question, Dr. Weinberg, who have been your literary influences? Are there any particular books or authors that inspired you or you have tried to emulate?
Oh Lord, literary influences. I'm heavily influenced by 19th century writers who specialized in the novel as we know it, although there are some dandies in the 18th century too. So Dickens, Balzac, Galdós, and a host of others too numerous to mention. And of course there's always Willa Cather in the early 20th century, her book Death Comes for the Archbishop. And more or less contemporary authors like Umberto Eco and A.S. Byatt, Jane Smiley, Carson McCullers, and mystery writers too like Laurie King, Margaret Cole, Sarah Paretsky, and Anne Perry. I've emulated none of them, but do admire most of them most of the time.
All right, thank you. And my second question, why have you chosen to write so many books about the Spanish missions and missionaries? Is there anything in your past or your studies that led you to this theme?
When I was hired at Trinity University, they showed me the campus first, and then the old Franciscan missions, 5 of them, along the San Antonio River. I was intrigued by their beauty and their mystery, and vowed that if I ever had the time, I would write about them and try to answer the question why there are 5, a situation that exists nowhere else in the world. The first free time I had was 10 years later. In any case, having been born in New Mexico, I wanted to write about my Patria Chica, the Southwest, but didn't want to write cowboy stories or about Bonnie and Clyde. Once I'd finished Apache Land's Franciscan Cross, that was my first novel, the one about San Antonio, the founding, I had become quite conversant with the ecclesiastical monastic mindset. I enjoyed doing the historical research for Lance, and had run across Ignaz Pfefferkorn while doing it. His story and the personality I could sense as I read his book on Sonora, entitled A Description of the Province of Sonora, intrigued me, so I wrote the first book about his early mission endeavor in Sonora. And that led to the 3 further mystery novels. In addition, I've written 3 historical novels about the French Renaissance, only one of them published in French, in Lyon. The other 2 are still manuscripts. My academic, scholarly work was mainly about the French Renaissance writer François Rabelais, although none of my novels is about him.
That's great, thank you. And I'm also curious from your writings, are you or have you been a Roman Catholic?
Yes, I'm a Roman Catholic, active in my church. My books are not intended as religious tracts, far from that, but they're meant to present the early history of evangelization and Europeanization of the natives of this continent as accurately and yet as interestingly as possible. Where this includes episodes that read down to the discredit of the Roman Church, I don't avoid them.
And have you studied Catholic theology in order to present it so well in the novels? Or is the Catholicism in your books just a result of the subject matter of the books?
Yes, I've studied theology with the equivalent of a major in that area in undergrad school, another undeclared major in philosophy, and the official one in French and Spanish language and literature. In my day, you could only declare one major. I have the equivalent of an M.A. in philosophy, but never wrote the thesis that was then required, and finished an M.A. in Spanish and also have an M.A. Ph.D. in French.
And finally, how do you go about writing historical fiction? Where do you draw the line on adding your own fictional elements to factual people or events? Do you ever add fictional elements to actual people, or only to your fictional characters? In other words, do you take what you find from research and use that as a base, then add fiction with fictional characters around it?
I remain true to every scrap of information I can find about the historical period and persons I'm writing about. Then I fill in the blanks. In Pfefferkorn's case, there are mainly blanks, at least as far as his personal history is concerned. There is good information about the mission routines, curriculum, who the other missionaries were, about the natives, the landscape, plants, animals, insects, mostly from Pfefferkorn's book. Then I plot a mystery that will fit the circumstances. In every book, I add an historical appendix at the end that explains what is fiction and what fact. I dislike historical fiction writers who pretend that their inventions are real, although most real history contains loads of distortions, just as eyewitness accounts of a crime cannot be trusted. In most cases, I'm forced to add fictional elements to real characters. For example, since no photographs exist, I imagine what Ignaz, a Rhinelander, must have looked like, although I have more guidance in this case than in Apache Lance or Seven Cities of Mud. I do have painted portraits of Ignaz's father and sister, so I can create him to resemble his family. Personal habits, all that, I have to imagine.
Wow, that's great information. Thank you so much, Dr. Weinberg, for taking the time to visit with me about your writing. So you can see why I would enjoy Florence Weinberg's works and why I would consider her a kindred spirit.